Have you ever really wanted to connect with somebody and found that no matter how much you tried, it instead seemed to be pushing them further and further away? And then you are left feeling the sense of kind of helplessness or panic or fear and also sadness because all you're really wanting is connection and you're coming from a really good place, but feel like it's misunderstood or poorly received from the person on the other end. If this sounds like you, especially over text message, you see these patterns showing up over text message a lot, then you might be anxious, preoccupied, and you might be struggling to engage people over text because of habits that you are not consciously aware of that often push other attachment styles away. So in this video, I want to unpack some of what those habits might be and what you can do instead so that you can have that result you're looking for of connection and closeness, rather than feeling like you're trying to get that, but it's showing up or it's, looking back at you, mirroring back to you, you just pushing people further and further away and having to deal with that feeling of confusion. So the very first thing you want to be aware of is that different relationships or different attachment styles in relationships, I'll say, tend to have different subconscious ideas and expectations about how much we should communicate and how often we should text. For anxious preoccupied specifically, often if an AP has like a really good first date and then second date, or even sometimes after a really good first date, they tend to expect that like the connection is going to take off and at a subconscious level, sort of expect that like from that point forward, you just text back and forth throughout the day immediately on a daily basis. And for other attachment styles, even for securely attached individuals, that can feel like a lot very early. And so while we may have that impulse, right, to like want to connect and want to go a million miles an hour because you feel good and you've got that like connection to somebody, it's, the average expectation for a securely attached person is to text 3 or 4 times a week for generally the first 4 to 6 weeks of dating. And then, as things start to ramp up, sort of between that 4 and 6 week mark forward, that's when there can be more and more texting. For dismissive avoidance, it's a little bit longer than that. Generally, DAs tend to want to text back and forth, like twice a week, things like that. If they're getting to know somebody, wants to touch base and see how the week's going, wants to actually plan a date. And that tends to be the norm. For dismissive avoidance for the first, I would say 2 to 3 months. And when I've seen dismissive avoidance feel pressured, like this is coming from a lot of conversations I've had with clients over the years. But when I saw a lot of dismissive avoidance who would engage in more frequent texting and then would feel frustrated and trapped and push the person away, I would ask them, well, why didn't you set a boundary around texting? Or why didn't you communicate how much you wanted to text? And what would that have been? And often DAs would say, even though I was texting more often, I ideally would just want to text somebody like once or twice a week until I feel like I've really built a connection and know them a lot more. And so that pattern of trying to text and engage all throughout the day often pushes all three other attachment styles away, even the securely attached person, because it can just feel like it's too much too soon. There are certain exceptions to that, but as a general rule, that tends to hold pretty strongly. Fearful avoidance tend to want to text, 3 to 4 times a week too, but it's not like in that secure way where the securely attached person is coming about it. It's usually because they're polarizing. Poor FAs are going from anxious and wanting to talk a lot and then feeling avoidant and pulling back. And, that flip-flopping can cause that 3 or 4 times a week in the first few weeks. So that's number one. Number two is double or triple texting. I think it's fine. I've had lots of conversations with the years. I'm not telling you like my personal opinion. I'm telling you from the collection of conversations I've had. It doesn't usually push anybody away if you double text, right? Like on a one-off, on a regular basis, it can. But if you text somebody, you don't hear back, and then you say, hey, just following up, or, something like that, that's okay every once in a while, right? But sometimes APs, when they're not getting that need met, rather than soothing through themselves and pausing, which is such an important skill for an AP to develop as they become more and more secure, rather than pausing, often what I'll see is an AP try to soothe through that person by going towards them again, which it looks like oftentimes in that early dating stage, texting somebody a bunch and texting again and then texting again. And then, and sometimes it can be about different topics. Sometimes it's not even following up on the original topic. It can be about a different topic or sharing a cool thing. And 2 texts in a row like that is fine. But again, in the early stages, if it's a third time or fourth time, this can make somebody feel like, oh my gosh, the expectations are too high of me for communication and I'm not there just yet, and I take longer to move at my pace to build a connection, and you're expecting a lot from me, and people will often try to manage their person's expectations by pulling away, right? By pulling back and to demonstrate what they think the expectation should be according to their behavior. Again, both people should just be communicating directly at the end of the day in a perfect world, but it's also tricky at the beginning stages when we're just getting to know somebody and we're like still assessing the situation. So that can be definitely a situation that causes people to pull away. And the other thing is sometimes anxious, preoccupied individuals. So number 3 habit, and this can be in romantic relationships, dating stage, but it can also be like with friendships, family relationships, later on in relationships. Sometimes APs will emotionally dump over text. And they may be needing like advice or validation or things like that, but they'll just kind of like have a big narrative over a text. And sometimes that can feel overwhelming on the receiving end as well. And it can be really beneficial for the AP instead to say like, hey, I want your advice about something. Can we chat on the phone? Or, hey, I want your advice on something. Can we talk this weekend? And that way there's like this established time to actually communicate through text, or sorry, communicate through talking rather than through text, which getting long text messages can sometimes feel really overwhelming, more so for the avoidant attachment style individuals, but at times for securely attached individuals as well. So I have a whole course. I just made it. We just did it live a couple weeks ago, and it's all about dating and texting and communication habits and expectations of different attachment styles and boundaries and when to text and how often, and how to vet properly when dating and develop standards and non-negotiables and preferences. Like there's so many things in there just to master the dating stage of relationships, because it can be so tricky. And I don't like that people sometimes give advice on dating from like a manipulation, like how to get them to never stop thinking about you, stuff like that. And it's like, well, are you being yourself when you're doing that? Because if you're not, then you can do all these things, these tactics to get somebody to not stop thinking about you. But then like, what happens when you have to just be yourself and like be known by the person in a relationship if the relationship evolves? Like, so this course is about conscious dating. It's about how to like have healthy conversations, how to work through dating stories that might be limiting you, how to express your needs and when to do so. And, these things that can really help you enjoy the dating process. So if you want to check it out, you can for free for 7 days using the link below. And that link actually gives you access to all of our courses at PDS, as well as our daily community events that we do with trained coaches and facilitators. And then also I do 4 live webinars every single week with our students. So you can come in, you can ask me questions over camera. You can type them in the chat if you want to be off camera, but it's a cool opportunity to connect and get your questions answered as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel if you are enjoying it. And I will see you in the next video.